There, she met with the queen of the sea, a serpentine figure with eyes that could pierce through the very fabric of time and space. "Welcome, my child," the marine queen said, her voice like a low hum vibrating through Isabella's very bones. "You have made the right choice. The power you seek is yours. But remember, nothing comes without a price." Isabella knelt before the queen, feeling her power grow with each passing second. The marine queen placed her hands on Isabella's head, imbuing her with the wisdom of the seas, dark, twisted, and filled with manipulation. From this moment on, Isabella could be able to control the lives of others, seeing into their deepest fears and desires, but at the cost of her humanity. "Your soul is now bound to this kingdom," the queen continued. "You will never be the same. You will lose yourself, but you will gain everything." In a world filled with countless voices claiming to speak for God, few have risen to the level of reverence that Prophetess Isabella has. Known to her followers as Mama Sees It All, she has built a legacy of power, wealth, and influence, drawing thousands from across the country to seek her divine wisdom. But there is more to Isabella than meets the eye. Behind her charm and grace lies a secret she will do anything to protect. And for those who fall victim to her lies, there is no escape. This is the story of Isabella the prophetess and the dark forces that she controls. Isabella was once a humble woman, a girl raised in a small village, nurtured in the teachings of light and hope. From an early age, she had shown promise, guiding people with her words, leading prayers and singing hymns with the choir. Her parents, devout and faithful, had raised her with the belief that through service to God, she would find fulfillment. But Isabella wanted more. Her dreams reached higher than just leading prayers in a small church. She wanted power, and she had a deep gnawing desire to be seen as more than just a servant of the Lord. When she moved to the city to pursue her calling, everything changed. Soon, her mesmerizing speeches and divine revelations drew large crowds to her modest chapel. But the crowds weren't enough. Isabella wanted influence, wealth, and most of all, respect. She longed to be revered as a godly woman with supernatural abilities. It was during a high-profile conference for pastors that she met Pastor Jamal, a charismatic leader with an unsettling air about him. He pulled her aside one evening after the conference.
"You are on the right path, Isabella,"
he said, his voice smooth and convincing.
"But your reach is limited. You can't change the world until you're willing to make a real sacrifice. The world's most powerful leaders have made deals, pacts that cost them dearly, but grant them everything they desire."
Isabella listened closely, her heart racing. She had heard rumors about pastors making deals with dark forces, but it was always just that rumors. Still, something about Jamal's word felt real, like a door opening to a world she had been too afraid to enter. "A sacrifice?" she asked cautiously. "What kind of sacrifice?" Pastor Jamal's smile deepened.
"A sacrifice that will change everything for you. Do this and you will never want for anything again. You will have power beyond imagination."
That night, Isabella agreed. In the dead of the night, under the pale glow of the moon, she participated in a forbidden ritual. The pastors gathered around her, chanting in an ancient language, and she offered a part of herself, her ability to have children, an offering to the dark forces that could give her everything she desired. The moment the ritual ended, Isabella felt a strange power surge through her. It was as if something dark, yet undeniably powerful, had attached itself to her soul. She could feel the change deep within, but the more she felt it, the more she welcomed it. She knew she had made the right choice. Isabella's life began to change in ways she couldn't have predicted. People from all walks of life come to seek her out, desperate for her healing and wisdom. Her once modest chapel was now a grand cathedral. The wealthy, the desperate, and the broken all flocked to her, offering whatever they could. It wasn't long before she was known as Mama Sees It All, a prophetess who could reveal secrets, heal the sick, and give divine insight into the most personal matters. But the power she had gained came with an unexpected side effect, an undeniable hunger for more. Every night, as the clock struck midnight, Isabella would disappear from her mansion. The followers believed she was praying in solitude, but in truth, she was leaving the physical world behind and descending into the underwater kingdom, a place where only the powerful could enter. One night, Isabella walked to the river bank behind her mansion. The air was thick with the sound of rushing water, and the wind howled around her. She closed her eyes and began chanting in a low rhythmic voice. As she spoke, her skin shimmered in the moonlight, and slowly, her body began to change. Her legs melded together, transforming into a sleek serpent's tail. Her eyes glowed, now filled with an ancient unsettling light. She submerged herself into the river, sinking deeper and deeper into the dark murky waters. When she emerged, she was no longer the woman who walked the earth. She was something far more powerful. She was now in the realm of the marine kingdom, a place where powerful, otherworldly beings dwelled. There, she met with the queen of the sea, a serpentine figure with eyes that could pierce through the very fabric of time and space. "Welcome, my child," the marine queen said, her voice like a low hum vibrating through Isabella's very bones. "You have made the right choice. The power you seek is yours. But remember, nothing comes without a price." Isabella knelt before the queen, feeling her power grow with each passing second. The marine queen placed her hands on Isabella's head, imbuing her with the wisdom of the seas, dark, twisted, and filled with manipulation. From this moment on, Isabella could be able to control the lives of others, seeing into their deepest fears and desires, but at the cost of her humanity. "Your soul is now bound to this kingdom," the queen continued. "You will never be the same. You will lose yourself, but you will gain everything." As Isabella's power grew, she became more controlling over her followers. She introduced a new practice, the mirror of life. Every member of her congregation was given one of these mirrors, which she claimed was blessed by the Almighty. Isabella stood before her congregation one Sunday, her voice smooth and commanding. "Look into the mirror every morning. Speak to it. It will reveal part of your soul that needs healing." The congregation was entranced, believing that they were on a path to spiritual growth. But in reality, these mirrors were tools of control. Through them, Isabella could peer into her followers' lives, learning their secrets, their weaknesses, and their fears. One day, she called a young woman named Kyra to the front of the church. Kyra, trembling, stepped forward, unsure of what to expect. "Last night, you argued with your husband about his job, didn't you?" Isabella asked her, her eyes locking onto Kyra's. Kyra gasped in shock. "How did you know?" The congregation gasped in awe, marveling at Isabella's ability. They believed it was a divine revelation. What they didn't know was that Isabella had already summoned Kyra's spirits through the mirror of life. Gathering all the information she needed, Isabella smiled knowingly, enjoying the power she held over them. The weeks went by. Isabella's influence grew exponentially. She became known not only for her divine revelations, but also for her uncanny ability to see into people's private lives, expose their darkest secrets, and provide them with solutions to their problems. Her congregation was filled with people who believed she had been sent by God to deliver them from the chaos in their lives. Little did they know her miracles came with a sinister twist. Each one exacted a price. Isabella's manipulative grip tightened around her followers, particularly on the wealthy men who attended her church. She had a knack for spotting their vulnerabilities, using her power to create doubt, confusion, and suspicion in their relationships. The first sign of this became evident when she began targeting Mr. Kiki, a successful businessman known for his family wealth. One Sunday afternoon, as Mr. Kiki sat among the congregation, Isabella's piercing gaze swept through the crowd. She paused when her eyes met his, her expression turning serious. She gestured to him, signaling that he should come forward. A wave of murmurs swept through the congregation, all eyes now on Mr. Kiki, who stood hesitantly before Isabella. "Brother Kiki," Isabella's voice rang out, smooth and calculating, "I see darkness surrounding your household." The Lord has revealed that someone close to you is working against your blessings. The entire congregation fell silent. Mr. Kiki's heart began to race, and he felt a cold sweat forming on his brow.
What do you mean, prophetess?
He asked, his voice shaking with uncertainty. Isabella leaned closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. It is your wife. She is envious of your success. Her spirit is entangled with greed, blocking your breakthroughs. Mr. Kiki's face turned pale. He looked around the room, his mind racing as he processed the words.
But my wife? How could that be?
Isabella smiled, a glint of satisfaction in her eyes. The Lord has shown me that you must distance yourself from her. Your prosperity will be restored if you separate yourself from her negative energy. The entire congregation watched in stunned silence, and Mr. Kiki, with a heavy heart, slowly nodded. His wife, sitting in the pews behind him, looked on in horror as the words sank in. She was now an enemy in the eyes of the prophetess. This wasn't just a divine revelation, it was a calculated move designed to fracture a family. As this scene unfolded, Elizabeth, who had been attending Isabella's church quietly, began to grow more and more suspicious of the prophetess' intentions. Elizabeth had always felt an unease about the way Isabella manipulated her followers, but seeing how she tore apart families for personal gain solidified her concerns. One evening, Elizabeth overheard a conversation between Felix and Linda, two of Isabella's most trusted aides. They were discussing how they had been instructed to keep an eye on wealthy men, those who could be easily manipulated by Isabella's so-called visions.
Can you imagine these people are paying so much just for a little salt and sugar?
Felix said, laughing. Linda chuckled.
They don't know. As long as they believe, we will keep milking them.
Elizabeth's stomach churned with disgust. She could no longer stand idly by why people were being misled and financially drained. But she also knew that exposing Isabella's secrets wouldn't be easy. The prophetess had built a strong network of followers who would defend her at all costs. Elizabeth knew that to expose Isabella's dark side, she would need hard evidence. She started paying closer attention, listening for any clues that might reveal more about the prophetess' manipulation. It wasn't long before she discovered something shocking. As the weeks passed, she noticed that people began obsessing over the mirrors that prophetess Isabella shared among her members. They were convinced that the mirrors had the power to heal them spiritually. But Elizabeth was starting to see the sinister reality behind them. Through these mirrors, Isabella could peer into the lives of her congregation, learning their fears, their desires, and their secrets. She knew she had to expose Isabella for the fraud she was. The way Isabella preyed on people's vulnerabilities, using their secrets against them, seeking Elizabeth to her core. But the more Elizabeth learned, the more dangerous her mission became. She overheard more conversations between Isabella's aides, including talk of how the holy water and the miracle oil that Isabella sold were nothing more than scams, designed to fleece the congregation of their money.
The salt and sugar in the water do nothing, no.
Linda said one night.
But it's enough to make them believe.
Elizabeth's heart raced. She knew she had to act fast. Driven by a mixture of fear and curiosity, Elizabeth decided to follow Isabella one night. She knew that the truth about the prophetess's powers lay hidden beneath the surface, and she was determined to uncover it. The night was dark, and the river near Isabella's mansion looked ominous as Elizabeth crouched behind the bushes watching. Her heart pounded in her chest as she saw Isabella step out of her mansion, dressed in a flowing robe. The prophetess moved with an eerie grace, her eyes glowing in the moonlight. Isabella approached the river bank, and Elizabeth's breath caught in her throat. She watched in awe as Isabella began to chant in a language she couldn't understand. Suddenly, Isabella's body began to shimmer, her skin shifting, her legs merging into a long serpent-like tail. Elizabeth's eyes widened in horror. She realized then that Isabella was not just a prophetess. She was something darker, something unnatural. Isabella slid into the river, disappearing beneath the surface. Elizabeth could barely process what she had just witnessed. This wasn't just a woman manipulating people for money. She was harnessing powers from a dark occultic world. The days following, Elizabeth's discovery of Isabella's dark transformation were filled with a mixture of dread and resolve. Elizabeth knew that she had crossed a line, but there was no turning back. Her heart was heavy, but she could feel an immense weight lifting off her shoulders as she realized that exposing Isabella's deceit was the only way to save those still trapped in the prophetess's web of lies. On the Sunday after Elizabeth's revelation, the tension in the air was palpable. As the congregation gathered, their usual fervor was replaced with a nervous energy. Word had spread that something big was about to happen. Elizabeth was ready, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Isabella had known this moment was coming. During the altar call, Isabella's eyes locked with Elizabeth's. There was no warmth in the gaze that once seemed inviting. Instead, it was calculating and cold. Filled with a menace Elizabeth couldn't shake. Elizabeth! Isabella's voice echoed through the church, smooth and hypnotic. The Lord has shown me that you are burdened with a heavy truth. Come, let Mama seize it all. Lift the burden from your soul. Elizabeth's heart pounded. She could feel the weight of the entire congregation's eyes on her. But she stood firm, her resolve unshaken. She stepped forward, her hand trembling slightly as she crossed the distance between herself and Isabella. Isabella's hand was cold as it touched her forehead. The moment their skin met, a jolt of energy shot through Elizabeth's body, and she felt as if her very soul was being torn apart. Isabella whispered in her ear, her breath chilling.
You are treading dangerous waters, my child,
she hissed.
Be careful, for some secrets are not meant to be uncovered.
Isabella's voice was both a warning and a threat, but Elizabeth did not back down. This was a moment. She had already gathered everything she needed. As Isabella's grip tightened, Elizabeth spoke, her voice steady. The truth will come to light, Isabella. The world will know who you really are. You've deceived so many, and now it's time for them to see the real you. Isabella's expression faltered for a brief moment before she recovered. Her sharp eyes glimmered with a mix of rage and calculation, but the audience had already begun to murmur. Sensing something was amiss, Elizabeth had planted the seed of doubt. In the days following, Elizabeth's confrontation with Isabella, the storm that had been brewing finally erupted. Elizabeth, with the help of other brave members who had quietly observed Isabella's manipulations, released the recordings, photos and testimonies to the media. The truth spread like wildfire. The reports that followed revealed the true extent of Isabella's fraud, her stage miracles, her dark connections to the marine kingdom, and her exploitation of her followers' vulnerabilities. People were shocked, appalled and enraged. The woman they had trusted, reverenced and believed in was nothing more than a master manipulator, using dark forces to control them. Soon, media outlets and investigative journalists began digging deeper. They uncovered her secret rituals, her transformations, and the way she used her power to tear apart families, especially the wealthy ones. Isabella's world, which had been built on lies, began to crumble. Her once flourishing ministry was abandoned as people fled from her teachings. The church was left empty, the walls echoing with the emptiness of her deceit. Her mansion, once a symbol of her false prosperity, was left abandoned, its walls falling into decay. Isabella herself disappeared. Some say she fled to the depths of the river, back to the underwater kingdom where she had drawn her power. Others believe she went into hiding, ashamed of the truth that had been exposed. No one knew where she went, but the legend of Mama See It All was over. Her reign of terror had come to an end. The moral of the story is that Elizabeth's courage to seek the truth and expose the darkness surrounding Isabella teaches us a valuable lesson. Appearances can be deceiving, and not everyone who claims to represent the light is truly sent by it. Sometimes, those in positions of power use manipulation, fear and deceit to control others. but truth always has a way of revealing itself, and no one can escape the consequences of their actions. The story also serves as a reminder that we must always remain vigilant, discerning, and question those who seek to control us, especially when they promise easy solutions or manipulate our deepest fears. It's crucial to trust our instincts and never to be afraid to seek the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. Lastly, true leaders are those who serve with humility, integrity, and a genuine desire to help others without expecting personal gain or using their followers for selfish purposes. They are true servants of God who lead with compassion and love, not through fear or manipulation. As for Isabella, her downfall was inevitable. The darker the power, the shorter the reign. Those who use deceit to manipulate others will eventually face the consequences of their actions, as the truth has a way of catching up with them. Please consider subscribing if you are yet to do that. Like and share this video. Till we meet on our next video. Bye.